Prepare for a journey through time that will take us to one of the most shocking and controversial moments in human history. Today, we'll uncover the secrets and tensions behind the Trinity atomic bomb test in 1945. We won't just recount the explosion. We'll delve into the brilliant minds who conceived it, the complex moral decisions surrounding it, the little-known curiosities, and the personal stories of those who witnessed the birth of the nuclear age. Buckle up, because this is the saga of how humanity unleashed the power of the atom and forever changed the course of war and peace. The race against time and the weight of a war. Imagine yourself in the early 1940s. The world was immersed in World War II, global conflict of devastating proportions. Millions of lives were being lost, and the shadow of Nazi tyranny and Japanese imperialism loomed large over the planet. In this context of urgency and desperation, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada secretly embarked on one of the most ambitious and risky scientific projects in history, the Manhattan Project. The genesis of this project dates back to fears that Nazi Germany might be developing its own atomic bomb. Renowned scientists, many of them European refugees who had escaped Hitler's regime, such as Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard, warned President Franklin D. Roosevelt of this possibility in 1939. The idea of Hitler possessing a weapon of mass destruction was a nightmare. Thus, the race to harness the power of the atom became a top priority. The Manhattan Project was an operation on an unprecedented scale. It wasn't just a laboratory. It was a network of secret facilities spread across the United States, employing hundreds of thousands of people, many of whom were unaware of the true nature of the work they were doing. These included Oak Ridge, Tennessee for uranium enrichment, Hanford, Washington for plutonium production, and the legendary Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico for weapons research and design. The mastermind behind the scientific conception of the bomb at Los Alamos was theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was a man of brilliant intellect and charisma, but also profound complexity. Oppenheimer brought together the greatest scientists of the time, a veritable pantheon of Nobel Prize winners and promising young minds, to work under immense pressure and absolute secrecy. Imagine the atmosphere at Los Alamos, a city built from scratch on a mesa, filled with elite scientists, their families, and an army of security guards, all living and working in isolation from the outside world. The project had two main approaches to the atomic bomb. One that used enriched uranium like the little boy bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima, and another that used plutonium, the Fat Man bomb, which would be dropped on Nagasaki, and the type tested at Trinity. The plutonium bomb was more complex to detonate, requiring a precise implosion mechanism in which conventional explosives would compress a sphere of plutonium to reach critical mass. This complexity meant that a test was absolutely essential. To verify that the theory worked in practice, as the war in Europe drew to a close with Germany's defeat in May 1945, the bomb's original purpose to prevent Hitler from getting it first shifted. Now, the focus was on Japan, which continued to hold out stubbornly in the Pacific, and on the prospect of a ground invasion, which, according to military estimates, could cost millions of lives on both sides. Pressure to complete the bomb and use it as a tool to force Japan's surrender was growing. However, there was intense ethical and moral debate among the Manhattan Project scientists. Some, like Leo Szilard and Albert Einstein, who had initially warned about the bomb, now opposed its use, advocating a demonstration to an international commission or even early warning to Japan. Others believed its use was necessary to end the war quickly and save American lives. Oppenheimer, for his part, was keenly aware of the terrifying power they were about to unleash, but he felt the weight of responsibility and the need to see the project through to completion. The site chosen for the test was a remote, uninhabited area, the Jornada del Muerto Journey of the Dead Desert in New Mexico, which was named Trinity Site. Oppenheimer's choice of the name, Trinity, is shrouded in mystery, with some theories linking it to a poem by John Donne. Secrecy was total. The area was cordoned off, roads were blocked, and even commercial aircraft were diverted, a 30-meter-high steel tower was built to support the test device, nicknamed the Gadget. This device was a full-scale version of the plutonium bomb, complex and massive, weighing several tons. Scientists and engineers worked frantically to assemble the Gadget under extreme security conditions and against the clock. The countdown to the fateful day was underway, the night of expectation and the dawn of a new. Soon as the test date approached, the atmosphere at Trinity site and Los Alamos was a mixture of tension, exhaustion, and almost feverish anticipation. The original date was set for July 16, 1945. The weather forecast was uncertain, with storms brewing in the early morning. The decision to proceed with the test under those conditions was made by the project director, General Leslie Groves, and by Oppenheimer himself. The 30-meter tower, with the Gadget at its summit, stood alone in the middle of the desert. Several observation bunkers had been built at safe distances, the main one about 9 kilometers from ground zero. Scientists, military personnel, and a few dignitaries positioned themselves in these bunkers, eager to witness what they hoped would be a revolution but feared would be a disaster. The countdown began. Many of the scientists placed bets on the power of the explosion. Some predicted a power equivalent to a few hundred tons of TNT, others a few thousand. No one knew for sure what to expect. The scale of the energy that would be released was unprecedented. In the final minutes, the desert darkness was almost absolute, punctuated only by a few flashes of light from measuring equipment and the mechanical sound of the countdown clock. The air was charged with electricity and nervousness. Oppenheimer, in particular, was visibly tense. He would later quote verses from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. The moment of detonation 5:29:45 a.m. July 16, 1945, at 5 hours 29 minutes and 45 seconds a.m., the New Mexico desert dawn was suddenly rent by a light of unimaginable intensity. It wasn't just an explosion, it was the birth of a new sun on Earth. The first thing observers saw was a flash of light so intense that, even from miles away, it appeared brighter than the midday sun. It illuminated the surrounding mountains with a spectral clarity. Many observers described the initial flash as unreal, otherworldly, or as if the sun had risen in the west. A few seconds later, the fiery sphere began to expand rapidly, a gigantic orb of hot plasma, hotter than the center of the sun. The fireball reached hundreds of meters in diameter in a matter of milliseconds. It vaporized the steel tower and turned the desert sand into a new, glassy green mineral, dubbed Trinitite. After the flash came the shockwave. It took longer to reach observers due to the speed of sound. When it arrived, it was described as a deafening roar, followed by a strong wind that knocked some observers off their feet and shook the bunkers. The shock wave traveled for miles, being felt over 100 miles away. Windows were shattered and cars shook in nearby towns. After the shock wave, the iconic mushroom cloud appeared, rising rapidly into the sky, carrying with it the explosion debris and water vapor. The cloud, which became the symbol of the atomic age, reached heights of over 12 kilometers, visible from hundreds of kilometers away. The power of the explosion was estimated at around 20 kilotons of TNT, exceeding the expectations of most scientists. It was a destructive power that no conventional weapon could match. The success of the test was unequivocal. The Gadget had worked. Reactions and emotions. The reactions of the scientists and military personnel present were varied and intense. Many were shocked and ecstatic at the power released, the recognition that they had harnessed a fundamental force of nature. Enrico Fermi, one of the project's architects, dropped small pieces of paper before the shock wave arrived to estimate the power of the explosion, demonstrating his analytical mind even amidst the chaos. Oppenheimer, after the silence and initial shock, uttered the famous phrase, "It worked." His expression was complex relief, triumph, and a deep apprehension about the implications of what they had done. He would later describe the scene using a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. General Groves, in turn, reportedly exclaimed, "I knew it would work." Trinity test facts. The Gadget The device tested at Trinity was an experimental weapon, not entirely field-ready. The uranium-4 little boy didn't need to be tested because its design was simpler and considered foolproof. The no test. There was debate about the need to test the uranium bomb. Because the design was more straightforward and there wasn't enough material for a test, it was decided to use it without a prior test. Safety and fear of chain reaction. Some scientists, including Edward Teller, were concerned that the explosion could ignite the Earth's atmosphere and create an uncontrollable chain reaction. Although calculations had ruled out this possibility, uncertainty lingered. The last seconds. In the final seconds before the detonation, a security officer shouted, 20 seconds, followed by a moment of tense silence. Trinitite, the glassy green mineral formed by the melted sand at ground zero, is radioactive and can still be found in small quantities in the restricted area. The fake news. To cover up the explosion and avoid panic, authorities issued a press release claiming that a munitions depot had accidentally exploded. Oppenheimer smoked. Reports suggest that Oppenheimer calmly lit a cigarette in the final moments before the explosion. Perhaps to contain his nervousness, the success of the Trinity test was immediately communicated to President Harry S. Truman, who was at the Potsdam Conference in Germany. The news informed him that the United States now possessed the most powerful weapon in history, a tool that could finally force an end to the war. The decision to use this weapon was now in his hands. The ethical dilemma and the immediate consequence, the resounding success of the Trinity test, confronted the American government and President Truman with an unprecedented moral and strategic dilemma. The weapon worked, and its power was overwhelming. The question was no longer if the atomic bomb could be built, but when and where it would be used. The debate over the use of the atomic bomb in Japan was multifaceted and involved military, political, and ethical considerations. Ending the war. The main argument in favor of its use was that the bomb would hasten the end of the war and save hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of lives, both American and Japanese, that would have been lost in a planned ground invasion operation downfall. Casualty estimates for an invasion were terrifying. Demonstration of power. Some argued that a demonstration of the bomb's power was necessary to convince Japan to surrender unconditionally, without the need for an invasion. Project cost. The Manhattan Project had cost billions of dollars in the currency of the time, and mobilized vast resources. There was implicit pressure to justify this massive investment with effective use. Soviet threat. While not the primary reason, the rise of the Soviet Union as a power and the emerging tensions of the Cold War were also in the picture, demonstrating American nuclear power could serve as a subtle warning. Moral implications. The main opposition came from scientists like Szilard and Einstein, who warned of the moral and humanitarian devastation of using such a weapon on civilians. They proposed a non-lethal demonstration or early warning. President Truman, faced with these options, and General Groves's report on the success of Trinity, authorized the use of atomic bombs. The decision was not easy, and he carried it with him for the rest of his life. On August 6, 1945, the little boy bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, on August 9, the Fat Man bomb was detonated over Nagasaki. The devastation was horrific, causing hundreds of thousands of immediate and long-term deaths from radiation and turning entire cities into ruins. The scale of the destruction shocked the world. Japan's unconditional surrender came on August 15, 1945, ending World War II. While the debate over whether the use of the bomb was justifiable or morally correct continues to this day, the fact is that it hastened the end of a conflict that had already claimed tens of millions of lives. The impact on global consciousness, the Trinity test, and the subsequent bombings of Japan marked the beginning of the nuclear age. The world now possessed the capacity to self-destruct on an unprecedented scale. This new reality brought a profound shift in geopolitics and collective consciousness. Nuclear fear, the fear of nuclear war, a nuclear winter, or mutually assured annihilation dominated the Cold War. This fear, while terrifying, also served as a deterrent to direct conflict between the nuclear superpowers. Anti-nuclear movements, the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the threat of future nuclear wars, gave rise to powerful anti-nuclear movements around the world, advocating for disarmament and arms control. Nuclear energy for peace. Despite its initial destructive use, the power of the atom was also directed toward peaceful purposes, with the development of nuclear energy for electricity generation. The U.S. Atoms for Peace program, launched in 1953, aimed to promote the peaceful use of nuclear technology. The atomic age in popular culture, films, books, and music began to reflect the fear and fascination with the atomic bomb. From film noirs with themes of nuclear paranoia to apocalyptic blockbusters, the Trinity test and subsequent events were not just a scientific milestone, they were a moral watershed. They forced us to confront the duality of human progress, the ability to create wonders while simultaneously inflicting unimaginable destruction. The nuclear age, born in that New Mexico desert, continues to challenge us to find the balance between power and responsibility. The legacy of Trinity, from the Cold War to the 21st century. 1945 Trinity test, though an isolated event, set in motion a chain of events that shaped the 20th century and continued to influence the 21st. The main consequence was the beginning of the Cold War, a period of geopolitical tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union that lasted nearly 40 years. The possession of nuclear weapons by both superpowers created a precarious balance, where the threat of mutual destruction prevented a direct, full-scale conflict, but fueled an incessant nuclear arms race. During the Cold War, thousands of nuclear warheads were built and tested, many of them in atmospheric explosions that released radiation on a global scale. These tests, while demonstrating their power, also raised significant concerns about their long-term environmental and health impacts. Post-Trinity science, nuclear science, born for war, has also found peaceful applications. Nuclear medicine. Knowledge of radioactivity and isotopes led to the development of innovative medical diagnostics and treatments, such as radiotherapy for cancer and life-saving imaging. Scientific research, nuclear reactors and particle accelerators, which emerged from nuclear bomb research, became essential tools for research in particle physics, chemistry, and materials. Science, industry and agriculture. Radioactive isotopes are used in various industries for quality control, sterilization, and even in agriculture to improve crops. The legacy of Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project scientists is complex. They were celebrated as heroes by some for helping to end World War II, but they were also haunted by the consequences of their creations. Many of them dedicated the rest of their lives to warning about the dangers of nuclear proliferation and advocating for arms control. Oppenheimer, in particular, faced political persecution during the McCarthy era due to his past associations and his opposition to some aspects of American nuclear policy, eventually having his security clearance revoked. This demonstrates the ethical dilemma and political pressure scientists faced when dealing with technology of such magnitude. Legacy facts. Fat Man vs. Little Boy. The Fat Man plutonium bomb design was much more complex, requiring the Trinity test for validation. The Little Boy uranium bomb had a simpler, more reliable design that did not require prior testing. Oppenheimer and the Bhagavad Gita. Oppenheimer's quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," is one of the most famous quotes of the atomic age and reflects the moral weight he felt. Trinity site today. The Trinity test site is now a National Historic Landmark and part of the White Sands Missile Test Area. It is open to the public only twice a year. The original blast tower was completely vaporized, but Ground Zero still shows the crater and trinitite. Lost watches. Many of the scientists' watches and measuring equipment near Ground Zero were melted or vaporized by the blast, a testament to the intensity of the heat. The nuclear threat remains a challenge in the 21st century. The proliferation of nuclear weapons to new countries and the risk of nuclear terrorism are global concerns. Non-proliferation treaties and diplomatic efforts are constantly needed to manage this dangerous legacy. However, the story of Trinity is not just a story of destruction. It is also a story of profound transformation and lessons learned. It forces us to reflect on the responsibility of science, the power of technology, and the need for wisdom in managing forces that can shape humanity's destiny. The eternal mushroom in human consciousness. The 1945 Trinity test resonates in human consciousness in complex and enduring ways. It was not just a military or scientific event. It was a philosophical milestone, a moment in which humanity demonstrated its ability to manipulate matter itself on a scale previously reserved only for nature or the gods. The famous mushroom of the nuclear explosion has become an icon, an ambivalent symbol of power and danger, of progress and self-destruction. It is etched into the collective memory, a constant reminder of the fine line between innovation and annihilation. The nuclear age that was born at Trinity forced us to rethink war, diplomacy, and survival itself. The doctrine of nuclear deterrence, though controversial, prevented major direct conflicts between nuclear-armed powers. But the risk of miscalculation, accidental escalation, or deliberate use remains a constant shadow. The responsibility of the scientist, the story of the Manhattan Project, and Trinity in particular, is a case study in the ethical responsibility of the scientist. The scientists who built the atomic bomb were aware of its destructive potential. Many of them wrestled with their consciences, and the following decades were marked by their efforts to control nuclear proliferation and promote disarmament. The legacy of Oppenheimer, Fermi, Szilard, and so many others is not only one of innovation, but also of moral reflection on the consequences of their creations. Illustrative personal story: The Peacekeeper. Imagine Hiroshi Tanaka, a Hiroshima survivor who lost his family in the bombing. Decades later, Hiroshi becomes an activist for peace and nuclear disarmament. He wasn't at Trinity, but the Hiroshima event was a direct consequence. He dedicates his life to telling his story, not with anger, but with the calm and firmness of someone who has seen hell and doesn't want anyone else to see it. For Hiroshi, the image of the mushroom cloud is a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the urgent need to eradicate all nuclear weapons. His voice, along with others, is a direct echo of that day in 1945, calling for a different future. The Trinity test also reminded us of the power of large-scale collaboration. The Manhattan Project was a monumental endeavor, bringing together diverse minds and colossal resources under a common goal. This big science approach became a model for future scientific and technological endeavors, from space exploration to genomic research. Communication, which allows us to share knowledge and warnings, is crucial in this scenario. The ability to broadcast the images and reports of the Trinity explosion and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to the world helped shape global awareness of the nuclear danger. It is ironic that the same force that can destroy the world can also be a means of educating and uniting humanity in the pursuit of peace. The Trinity test was a turning point, a watershed in human history. It gave us unprecedented power, but also an immense responsibility. The Trinity mushroom, though it has dissipated into the New Mexico air, remains in our memory, a vivid reminder of our ability to create and destroy, and of the constant choice we have to use our knowledge for good or evil. It is a complex legacy, yes, but one that continues to challenge us to seek a safer and more peaceful future. Fun facts and specific details. Final revision and addition. The detonation code. The final code for the detonation was 0. Oppenheimer and peace. After the war, Oppenheimer expressed regret about using the bombs on cities, becoming an advocate for international nuclear arms control. The music at Trinity. Before the explosion, some scientists reportedly listened to classical music, including Tchaikovsky, to calm their nerves. The portable radiation meter. The concept of a portable Geiger counter arose from the need to measure residual radioactivity after the Trinity test. Explosion footage. The Trinity explosion was filmed by several high-speed cameras, providing crucial visual records for analysis and posterity. These images are now iconic. Impact on local weather. The heat of the explosion was so intense that it generated a massive convection current, creating a small sandstorm and even lightning shortly after the detonation. The Potsdam Conference. News of Trinity's success was delivered to Truman during the Potsdam Conference, where he was meeting with Churchill and Stalin. This news gave Truman a considerable advantage in the negotiations. We've reached the end of our in-depth analysis of the 1945 Trinity test, an event that, in a single stroke, revealed the immense power of the atom and forever changed the course of human history. We relived the intense race against time, the moral dilemma of the scientists at Los Alamos, and the colossal impact of that explosion in the New Mexico desert. Trinity wasn't just an experiment. It was the birth of the nuclear age, a watershed moment that forced us to confront humanity's capacity for destruction and the immense responsibility that accompanies such power. This story reminds us that scientific and technological advancement, no matter how brilliant, carries an undeniable ethical weight. It challenges us to consider the consequences of our innovations and the need for wisdom in dealing with forces that can shape the fate of the world. If this journey through history and science touched you and made you reflect, please like this video to help us share more stories like this. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next explorations of crucial moments in humanity and science, and activate the bell to receive regular notifications. And to continue your own journey of discovery, click on the video now on the screen to delve into another fascinating chapter. Thank you so much for your attention and for sharing this reflection with us. May history teach us, and may peace prevail.